Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Tackling the pandemic has so far cost the UK a staggering £372 billion, according to the National Audit Office. The Public Spending Watchdog said today the impact of COVID was unprecedented, but the government had lacked a detailed plan for handling the crisis, which it said had exposed existing fault lines in society. And it warned that standards of transparency and accountability had to be maintained, even in such an extreme situation. Our economics correspondent Helia Ebrahimi reports.
Shortages in PPE, transparency failures, records and oversight that simply wasn't there. That's the verdict of the government's spending watchdog. It calculates we spent £372 billion dealing with the pandemic. But was the government adequately prepared?
There were no detailed plans for closing down big parts of the economy, for closing down all schools. Government lacked a detailed playbook for the various elements of the pandemic response that proved to be necessary.
Today's report is the first comprehensive assessment of the government's handling of the crisis and comes ahead of next spring's public inquiry. The UK has suffered one of the worst death tolls from COVID-19 in the world, with criticism that the government delayed tough decisions. Next week, the Prime Minister's ally turned enemy, Dominic Cummings, is threatening to reveal damaging documents that expose the chaotic nature of Number 10's crisis management. And alongside the political controversy, a massive economic bill. The job retention scheme has been the biggest cost at £62 billion, with test and trace originally £15 billion, but now £38 billion. Up to £23 billion is expected to be lost in bounce-back loans, and the bill for PPE is now coming in at a whopping £18 billion.
There's all sorts of legacies from this experience. There are backlogs in healthcare, backlogs in the criminal justice system. But there'll also be a substantial new loan book that government has.
Does that worry you?
Well, in financial terms, it's a big worry.
The government insists they've done everything they can in a giant wartime effort to save lives and jobs, presenting critics as Captain Hindsight. But today, the watchdog said that shouldn't mean that value for money is thrown out of the window. £372 billion already spent in this crisis, and money wasted now is money that won't be there in the future.
Our job is to make sure that government is accountable for how it spends public money. And
is that still important in the middle of a crisis? Value for money? Is
yes.
it as important?
Well, it finds a new place in the pecking order, clearly. So that's where transparency becomes absolutely critical. And that's not bureaucratic paperwork. That is straightforward accountability for spending public money.
Allegations of cronyism within government have been stoked by the failure to keep and produce clear records and publish contracts on time.
Obviously, really important to be clear that the only factors influencing decision are getting the right equipment in the right time for the right price. And in a pandemic, of course, that's under real pressure. So all the more reason to be very clear about how any conflicts of interest have been identified and managed.
Was the government clear enough?
Not clear enough, no. We laid that out in our report.
That's sharp criticism from the Auditor General, not usually given to dramatic interventions. And what of the clarity of the government's messaging on foreign travel?
The variants keep emerging, the science keeps providing new evidence, and obviously...
And the communication keeps failing to get through.
As our report shows, some of those areas have been managed well and demonstrably improved over the time that they've been running.
Not all, though.
But not all.
In recent weeks, ministers have won praise for the success of the vaccine rollout. But there are still many lessons from today's report that have still not been fully absorbed.